were denounced and condemned for causing
anything
offence.
I could say that would offend you?
Well, there may be plenty of things you can say, but you have the right to say them, providing you don't incite violence against other human beings.
What's up, YouTube? Hope you guys are feeling good. My name is Elaru, and today I'm back to the video and check out with you guys. This is called Douglas Murray and Richard Dawkins. Do we have the right to offend Muslims? You know how it goes, guys. We talk less and we react more. Let's check this out.
And these are what some Muslims do in response to that. That's not a lie. That's just a statement of fact.
Many of the most important social freedoms and advances have been brought about by people who cause. The most important social freedoms and advances have been brought about by people who caused great offence in their time. Galileo, Charles Darwin, they caused offence to the church because they spoke out against the church orthodoxy. The first people who spoke out against slavery caused great offence. Those who denounced the church and the way the church supported slavery, they were denounced and condemned for causing offence.
Anything I could say that would offend you?
Well, there may be plenty of things you can say, but you have the right to say them, providing you don't incite violence against other human beings.
But how do we not legislate is the wrong word, but how do we make sure that people don't cross that line? Because it's a very grey area, isn't it? Miriam, you wanted to come back in.
Well, I mean, I was going to say, there are certainly things that are offensive, but do we need to offend people by saying them? I mean, there's a way of saying things.
Without being offensive.
We can discuss the institution of the monarchy in this country without insulting the Queen. It therefore makes it perfectly reasonable and possible to discuss, I think, the tenets and beliefs of any other religion without insulting sensibilities.
Insulting sensibilities, that's interesting. Without insulting sensibilities. Okay, some Muslims think that music and dancing are haram and should be forgiven, not forgiven, wrong word, Freudian slip, forbidden, haram, that it's forbidden. So if I were to say, music, forbidden, haram, that is just bonkers. Now, some people are going to find that extremely offensive, aren't they? Have I offended sensibilities? Do I have the right to say that?
I think if people that are used to having debates within the interfaith debates are pretty familiar with the codes and practices of different religions and understand where those boundaries lie. And certainly that would not be one of those boundaries. But there are certain things that even people with no religion would find offensive. If I was to come on TV and start insulting, you know, I mean, I hate to be crass, but your mother, that would be extremely offensive. Now, we feel as strongly about our mothers as we do about the Prophet Muhammad. That doesn't mean you can't discuss what he says, the message he brings.
People in this country put up with being offended. Walking down the street, you get offended. There's somebody wearing something you don't like, or you get offended. It's part of being grown up. It's just accepting the fact that you get your feelings trodden upon. Does it mean you have to deliberately tread on people's feelings? No, not necessarily.
Exactly.
But what you cannot do is to ring-fence one ideology through fear, intimidation, or anything else. And that is what we see happening. That's what Ben Elton was saying.
Richard Dawkins, Professor, you've obviously, I mean, a lot of people have taken offence at some of the things that you've written. You know, they feel personally offended because they feel that their faith, which is so dear to them, and their belief, which they cherish, has, you know, you're criticising it. Do you think about that?
I don't go out of my way to offend.
No, but do you think about the possible consequences?
If people are offended, then they may argue against me. All I use is words. There's a radical distinction between using words and violence, and incitement to violence. The Salman Rushdie affair absolutely brings this out. Salman Rushdie simply wrote a book. That's what he did. He wrote a book. He was threatened with death. He was threatened with death by baying crowds in this country. People burned his books. They demanded the death penalty. And
some leading parliamentarians suggested that the paperback shouldn't come out.
Some leading parliamentarians, some leading clergymen, some leading bishops sided with the Ayatollah Khomeini rather than sided with this very distinguished novelist who did no more than put words on paper. That is a radical distinction.
Can I let Miriam come back in?
I do sort of feel like we're talking about issues in a vacuum here. I mean, you're talking about the fatwa against Salman Rushdie. Are we forgetting that we're talking about Khomeini? Are we forgetting that we're talking about the 1979 revolution and the context in which that was occurring? And similarly, when we talk about, you know, the reaction, the highly unacceptable, violent reaction of some Muslims, I would like to add, had to films like Geert Wilders' films and Van Gogh's film, etc., you know, we're almost talking like it's completely decontextualized. It's not happening in a vacuum.
Okay.
Muslims around the world feel victimized.
You're completely wrong. One of the people who supported the fatwa against Salman Rushdie was now Sir Iqbal Sakrani, a leader of the Muslim Council of Britain. He got a knighthood after saying that death was too good for Salman Rushdie. And he's a leader. He was a leader of the Muslim Council of Britain.
A.L. Kennedy, do you think that anything goes?
Yeah, I think we need freedom of speech. What alarms me more than anything is that freedom of speech is being constantly redefined as the right to offend, and it's only the negative aspects that were being shown. And that leads to absurdities like the photographs from the torture at Abu Ghraib are redefined in terms of these photographs are offensive and are causing unrest. And you don't get the dialogue which is about it's offensive to torture people, that causes unrest, and photographs of torture. And you have this absurd situation where the more true something is, and we are quite often talking about questions of belief and questions of factual, provable truth, the more true something is, the more offensive it will be. So, for example, you can't, or you would want to watch putting an article into a newspaper about a corporation because it would offend the corporation. And if it's true, you would want to be even more careful because it would impact even more on the share price. So this whole kind of right to offend seems to prevent truth from appearing now.
And what was so interesting in our earlier debate was we had a Christian evangelical who was, we have to admit, pretty offensive if you were gay, and yet Richard didn't think that that was allowed. So we are not allowed, you know, we are allowed to have Muslims feel offended, but not Christians.
I didn't say she shouldn't speak.
Richard, you said that she was
allow Richard to come back.
Offensive.
I didn't say she shouldn't speak. Of course she's free to speak. I simply said that her personal opinion is of no interest on a factual matter where there is evidence.
Richard, what do you think
You can always have a difference of opinion, and when there is a difference of opinion, you're pro-homosexuality, she's anti-homosexuality, so be it, you put those opinions out in the arena. Where it gets downright offensive, when you're going to offend millions of people who died in the Holocaust by saying it never happened, that's fundamentally wrong.
But Sir Rabbi, should David Irving not have been, should David Irving not be allowed to talk?
Bishop Tom, let's go on to this. As a final thought, Bishop Tom, cartoons for a second. Can I just take you to a specific point? There have been cartoons of, you know, God, a white man on a cloud in our culture and civilization for eons. You know, it's not something we get concerned about. Why should we make special rules for other people?
But there are different cultures. I mean, what was it, 10 years, 15 years ago, Spitting Image portrayed Jesus Christ as a hippie. We weren't terribly pleased about it, but we live with that culture. The Muslim community in this country said, he's one of our prophets. You don't denigrate our prophet.
The Life of Brian was a similar kerfuffle, wasn't it?
Now, actually, that was a very interesting kind of meeting of different cultures, different habits. And if we're going to share one country, and if we're going to have social cohesion, we've got to respect one another and think before we act.
Britain is one of the most...
I have not got the freedom here now to shout fire, because if I do... A lot of people
about saying you would. You do have the right. If it was on fire, you should shout fire.
Yes, but if it's not on fire, you don't shout fire. There's a limit to freedom.
So we have to. So we have to watch our P's and Q's.
We have to watch about shouting fire in the public arena if that is going to damage our social cohesion.
Britain is one of the most multicultural, multi-faith countries in the world. And it's just not possible to carry on in a way you don't offend anyone. The answer is we don't have the right not to be offended, any of us.
Thank you all very much indeed.
This was pretty tough. Now, this entire argument centers around the freedom of speech. And I agree with one of them that said that the freedom of speech now is mainly generalized on negative aspects, the right to offend. Because you have the right to say something doesn't mean it should be insensitive. Like this Reverend Father just said, before you talk, you actually have to think about what the other person will feel by what you're about to say. And to support that point, another person said that you should actually have a way to put that out without being offensive. Yes, the first Muslim speaker, she said, there's a way to express yourself without being insultive. most people just, the way it comes to their head, they just take it out without taking time to think about what it is that they want to say, which is wrong, if I'm to admit. It's very wrong. The thing is, due to the fact that there are different societies, different beliefs, different religions, different groups or sects in a community, an offense must always be present. There must just be a slight slip here or there. That's just the truth, because of the diverse nature of the community. And just like one of them said, you don't have the right to not be offended, if that's the truth. Because as human beings, we must just have different opinions and different sectors. Now, this video now concentrates on the Muslim society. I mean, it's talking about how both they and the Christian sect have criticized a man, as Mr. Richard said, Mr. Richard Dawkins, he said he wrote words on paper but was faced with extreme violence. Now, were those people free to act like that? Yes. Was he free to put words on paper? Yes. But then, due to the fact that contrasting beliefs came together and could not work together, it resulted in violence. That is always the case for contrasting beliefs. Bottom line is, I don't think anyone has the right to offend anyone. And if you do see that you have offended another party by what you say, the right thing to do is to apologize. Yes, that's the truth. Although it's very difficult for some people, because most people often tend to pick fault from the little things you do. And you seeing within yourself that you don't feel you're wrong, this might be difficult. But the truth is, as one of the speakers said, we have to reason, and reason very well before we let some things out. And if you feel it's going to cause violence, as the other speaker said, if you feel it's going to cause violence, then just keep it in. Don't bother. At least just for the purpose of peace. Guys, let's think about this in the comment section. And leave a thumbs up at the end of this video. Thank you all for watching, and stay safe.